There's two trees in the desert.
A dead and alive.
Well, sort of. But this tree has root. It doesn't need water because it has roots that go 150 feet into the ground. So it doesn't really need much water because they go way down there. But you'll see this tree and you'll run up to it and you'll see these huge fruits on there. And you'll grab one and it'll feel like it's just full of juice. So you'll break it open and you'll see just air and pollen. It will be empty, except for this little tiny white juice that comes out of the skin. That is highly poisonous. This tree is called an arata tree. In Jeremiah 17, the translators came across this word arata, and they didn't know what it meant. So they put bush there, which isn't entirely wrong, but you don't get the whole picture by it. It says, cursed is the one who trusts in man, who depends on his own flesh for his own strength, and whose heart turns away from the Lord. He will be like a bush. He will be like an arata tree in the desert, and he will not see prosperity when it comes. He will dwell in the parched places of the desert, in the salt land where no one lives. An arata tree is something that looks amazing on the outside. But if you were to come up to it and crack it open, there would be nothing inside except death. Now, if you are studying or building your life, your career, your relationships, and your own strength, you might look amazing. I mean, you might look like you're the best person in the world and look most successful. But if someone were to crack you open, you'd be empty and just full of death on the inside, because you've done it in your own strength. Following in Jeremiah, it says, "But blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him. He will be like a tree planted by the water, that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in a year of drought, and it never fails to bear fruit." That's one tree, the arata tree. Another tree, this is the only shade tree in the desert. It's called a broom tree. And in the heat of the desert, you can't survive. That's why you need a hat at least. Because if your head is in the sun, your head absorbs the most heat. It also lets out the most. But if your head is in the sun in this desert, 120-degree temperature in this desert, it will start to react by lowering the blood flow to the brain, and it will slow the thinking process, and you'll start to do stupid things. That's why there's a saying, it's the uncovered head that kills you in the desert. But what you usually look for is just enough shade to survive. You'll come upon one of these trees, and you'll see a shepherd girl laying with her body in the sun and her head in the shade. That's because the head is the most important part of the body to keep covered. But those are two trees in the desert. And I'll tie in with the rest of the lesson. The desert is where you live when life is tough, when life is hard, when you have troubles. And you're thinking, somebody in here might be in the desert, and y'all might be thinking, I don't know if I can take another step. Maybe you have a concern for a friend, or there's some family troubles, or somebody you know doesn't know Jesus, or a breakup is just devastating you, or somebody that you know, like in your family or just a friend, might be really sick. And you'll be thinking, I don't know if I can take another step. That's what it's like to be in the desert. Just there. And you have all this pain on your shoulders. You're just thinking, I don't know if I can take another step. But what you need to look for is just enough shade to survive. Just enough to cover your head. I wish I could tell you that when life gets hard and all these troubles come, that God would lower the temperature to 68 degrees, send a nice breeze through, send you some water, some food, and some shade, and some rescue. But usually what you get is just enough to survive. See, part of the problem is the world thinks if you're a believer that life is going to be roses. And then the desert comes along and we can't handle it. We say, where are you, God, and how could you do this to me? God never promises you anything and more than enough, anything more than just enough to take one more step. And that's it, just one more step. There's two metaphors. One's honey and one is rock. Honey is always a metaphor for the sweetness of God. Taste and see that the Lord is good. In the Jewish schools, in their kindergarten class, will be these kids. And the teacher, the first day of school, the teacher will stand up, say some nice things to the class, and after a couple minutes, the rabbi will walk in. He'll walk in. He'll be this nice, old, bearded man. He looks kind. And he'll walk over to each of the desks. And he'll set the Torah, the first 5 books of the Old Testament. He'll set a brand new Bible on each one of their desks. And then after that, he'll go back to his desk, pull out square pieces of wax paper. He'll go around and set a piece of wax paper on each one of their desks. Then he'll go back to his desk and take out a honey bear. He'll go around and squeeze a dot of honey on each one of the pieces of wax paper. And he'll say, now I want you to take your little finger and dip it in the honey and lick it off. And don't you ever forget, that's what God tastes like. It's amazing. Honey is always a metaphor for the sweetness of God. Another metaphor is rock. There's a lot of metaphors for rock. But one is, you're walking on life's pathway, and what are the rocks in your path? The small rocks might just be a small issues back home. They'll just be frustrating and annoying. But you'll keep going. Then you'll have a couple bigger rocks. And that just might be a concern for a friend. And you'll stub your toe on it, and just keep going. Then you'll have bigger rocks. And it'll be like someone's really sick that you know. But you'll get over that after some struggles. And then you come up to this huge rock, and you just walk up against it, where somebody might have died, a family member or a friend. And you're just telling God, I can't go around this one, it's too big. Psalm 81. Psalm 81 says, if my people would listen to me, I would satisfy them with honey from the rock. So where's God on life's pathway?
Inside the rock.
He's in the rocks. He's in those tough times. He's in every painful rock. There is enough of honey in every painful rock to keep going. There's enough of God to keep going in every trouble. And if you're following Jesus on a God path, there is no rock without enough honey to take another step. Have you been there? Isn't that when God is the most intense? Isn't often in the tough times, when we have huge troubles, when God is screaming at you the most? And what's in the rocks on the other path? Nothing. There's nothing to keep you going. And you might come across this rocky path in the desert. And when you're on this rocky path, that's when God screams at you. And in the desert, when you're on this rocky path, you hear God. And that's a good thing. Because there's nowhere else to turn except God. That's why we need to live in the desert.